Tutankhamun's funerary temple, his tomb, and the sarcophagus found in it. A funerary temple for Tutankhamun at Medinet Habu. Specialists once supposed that Tutankhamun had commissioned the mortuary complex, which lies at Medinet Habu immediately to the north of the funerary temple of the 20th dynasty King Ramesses III. Excavations at the site in the 1930s, conducted by Chicago's Oriental Institute under the direction of Yuval Holster, uncovered 9 foundation deposits, but the objects in them bear I's name as pharaoh, not Tutankhamun's. Plenty of documentation exists for Hormuz's usurpation of the temple from King A. The evidence of erred in favor of Tutankhamun's original ownership of the temple amounted to colossi found there which supposedly resembled him, even though there was no trace of his names in the inscriptions. Only traces of King I's names could be discerned under the hieroglyphs in the cartouches, laying claim to the sculptures for Hormuz. The best preserved among them are 2 quartzite colossi depicting a striding king, one now in Cairo and the other in Chicago's Oriental Institute Museum, and a limestone bust from a colossal seated statue which Richard Lepsius brought to Berlin in the mid-19th century. All 3 preserve the body type and the physiognomy of King A, not Tutankhamun. The only object bearing Tutankhamun's name which derives from the vicinity of Medinet Habu is a burned reused mud brick with the stamp of Neb-Pura Tutankhamun's praenomen, found in the rubbish of Ramesses III's western fortified gate. Huge quantities of bricks stamped with the cartouche of Amenhotep III were found reused at Medinet Habu by the archaeologists from Chicago. They come from the older king's nearby palace complex at Malkutta, where Tutankhamun's reign may well have witnessed construction activity. The brick with Tutankhamun's throne name could derive from some building erected during his reign at Malkutta. It would have then come to Medinet Habu, along with the bricks of Amenhotep III when, beginning in Dynasty XX, the structures at Malkutta were systematically demolished to obtain building material for reuse. Nowadays, discussion of Tutankhamun's funerary temple centers on inscribed architectural elements, architraves, door jambs, segments of piers, lotiform columns, and cornices, and wall reliefs retrieved from secondary contexts in and around the Karnak and Lua temples. Others have been discovered in Signify, Cantley later contexts, reused on the West Bank as well as beyond the city limits of contemporary Lua. The mansion of Neb-Pura. The honor of having recorded the first relief, attributable to a funerary temple for Tutankhamun, goes to the French savant Achille Pris d'Arvens. His drawing of a block, which he saw in Karnak Temple, was published in 1847. The complete scene showed a king spanning his bow while hunting from his chariot in the desert. Although the cartouches are not completely preserved, enough unmistakable traces remain to identify the pharaoh as Tutankhamun. Ray Johnson has provided an overview of all the inscribed and/or decorated blocks attributable to the mansion which had been located down to the beginning of this century, and he discusses some problems of interpretation associated with them. Ray and Mark Gabold, who illustrates and considers several scenes in his unpublished dissertation on A, are currently preparing a comprehensive joint publication of the corpus. The sandstone used for the architectural elements and wall reliefs of the mansion was not quarried in post-Amarna times, but rather at Akhenaten's command, to construct and decorate structures he erected at Karnak Temple before the move to Tel El Amarna. Some blocks reused in the construction of the mansion are of traditional size, measuring 65 centimeters tall by 150 centimeter wide, such as were used in the earliest phase of Akhenaten's construction work at Karnak. Most are, however, Talatat in the corpus compiled by Mark and Ray. Tutankhamun's titulary figures prominently in the inscriptions on the architraves. On the piers, he is depicted as pharaoh in the presence of various gods and goddesses, and in the wall reliefs his figure occurs in a variety of contexts. He is also present in word and deed, but in 2 different capacities: as a courtier in the following of his sovereign Tutankhamun, and as a king in full panoply, honoring the memory of his young predecessor, whom the dedicatory texts on some architraves style his son. I's figures in the former context have been carefully erased and plastered over. His royal titulary in the inscriptions on the architraves, asserting his role in making the monument for Tutankhamun, were also carefully erased in apparent preparation for usurpation, but this was never carried out, nor was Tutankhamun's titulary on the same architraves touched. By contrast, the figures of both Tutankhamun and Ay as kings on the piers and in the wall scenes have been attacked, in the associated cartouches, all, but the names of the gods Amun and Re have been hacked out.